Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. Tonight, our guest is Carter Smith, the writer and director of Swallowed, which is available on demand today, February 14th. Carter, thank you so much for being here with us. Congratulations on the film. It's a great
Thank you so
film.
much.
I'm really looking forward to talking about this because you give us some really unique perspectives in Swallowed that we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on. Now,
Okay.
let's first start out with Swallow tackles the topic of drug mules. Okay. Now, how are you going to approach this story and give it your own unique spin?
Um, I hadn't seen that many sort of drug mule movies before.
That is
So
true.
I kind of didn't have this sort of established idea of uh what the conventions were. Um, I just came at it from the perspective of like, okay, what happens if these guys get into something that isn't what they expected, and sort of at every turn, everything that could go wrong kind of does go wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, the drugs, if we can call them that, that are being smuggled across the border are not your typical narcotics. How
they
did
are
you come
not.
up with that idea to use? I mean, I'll let you explain. Just
Yeah,
how did you
I
come
mean,
up with that?
I had read a bunch about sort of this the trend of sort of natural substances as drugs, whether it's something like ayahuasca or some sort of
Licking a
venom
frog.
from, yeah, exactly, a frog venom, exactly. Like there's a lot of that I found kind of interesting. I mean, frightening, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
for me, and but also kind of fascinating. And I liked the idea that, I mean, for me, the most horrific stuff is always are the things that are, almost could be real. That's sort of much more terrifying than a demon or a,
Oh, yeah.
something sort of supernatural or, out of this world. Like something like what happens to these guys in this film is kind of more frightening because it's takes place in a world that feels very real to me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing this movie definitely does, it brings the audience into not this make believe fantasy world, but something that could very well be happening at any point in any part of the world. Now, the two main characters are Benjamin and Dom, who are
Yep.
best friends. Benjamin is gay, Dom is straight. The scene in which Dom reveals how he feels about Benjamin and their friendship is a really special moment in the film. How did you finally settle on how that sequence of events, that scene was going to unfold?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the film takes place on all over one night,
Mm-hmm.
and it's Benjamin. It's sort of their last night hanging out together before Benjamin is getting ready to move off to LA. So I kind of felt like, they've grown up together. They're really good friends, and this would be the night if anything was going to come out.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, this would be the sort of the last chance that they would have to talk about some of that stuff. And I think that sort of last chance feeling is sort of what gave Dom, or what gives Dom the sort of confidence to open up a little more than maybe he would if it was just another night.
Absolutely. It's
Um,
like this is his last chance. He may never see
yeah,
Benjamin ever again. Now, there are two terrifying aspects to this film, like you mentioned. One being the little creatures, shall we call them, that are being smuggled across the border. And then we have Mark Patton's character. And
yeah,
Mark did a fabulous job.
yeah.
Was it your intention for one aspect to feed into another and to bring this terrifying film together?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of liked the idea that, I mean, I think that as terrifying as Mark Patton is Alice, Jenna Malone's
Oh
character,
yeah.
I mean, she's small, but she is fierce and she is dangerous. And I kind of liked the idea that the two of them, as the, quote unquote traditional villains, don't look like what you might expect these characters to look like in a
Mm-hmm.
in a film like this. I mean, normally, like, Jenna's character Alice would be like a tough guy,
Yeah.
and be sort of a big burly guy with a gun, and then here she is, and she's got this soft sing-song voice and this blonde hair, and she's half the size of Dom, but she somehow manages to like completely command the situation and take charge. And so I liked the idea that the sort of the exterior villains were as unexpected as what's in the baggies and inside their stomachs after that point in the film.
And we're going to go to Alice some more in a bit. Now, Mark Patton's character is a flamboyant personality, a sociopath who thinks he can get away with anything. He never has to pay for what he does.
Yeah.
What was your inspiration for Mark Patton's character?
I
Besides
thought
the hundreds of thousands of serial killers we've had out there.
yeah. I mean, but I don't think that I didn't think of him ever as a straight up 100% villain. Like I sort of had to latch onto the humanity of that character. And I imagine that, he is from this same small town Maine community where Benjamin and Dom live.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up and being that character, Rich, being kind of flamboyant and over the top, and that's got to be tough. And so I think that there was probably, I imagine there would be a lot of sort of armor that he
Mm-hmm.
would put on to sort of, to posture himself and to sort of appear to be, sort of a lot more badass than maybe he feels on the inside.
So
And
you
I
would
think
not
that
really classify him as a sociopath. He's just somebody who's been through a lot and is really hardened at this point.
I mean, he's probably got sociopathic tendencies. Like, like he's not, he's not just like a straight up nice guy for sure. He's got
Yeah.
to screw loose. But I think that what was always important for me was to, to make sure that he didn't sort of tip over into a caricature,
Yeah.
and that there was, humanity in him. And that, I think it's kind of interesting that he can see a lot of himself in Benjamin,
Yeah.
and sort of being the beautiful, kind of guy that everyone wants a piece of, and that's those days are in his past, and how anyone deals with that, I think is kind of interesting.
It is. It is. That's
Yeah.
great. That's a great point you just made. Now, being the director, I could tell you used colors to represent some different moments in the film. Yellow is a big color in this film.
Mhm.
Tell us the significance of the color yellow in Swallowed.
That's the kind of stuff that I never really think of beforehand necessarily, but it kind of it comes out, as the film comes together.
Yeah.
I mean, from the beginning, I wanted to shoot everything, sort of with natural light, using a lot of daylight, and if like kind of from the beginning, like a pink and a yellow palette, and it's in that opening scene, but it's in the titles and it's in the poster and it's in some of that stuff. But a lot of it is sort of, once you get into the woods and into the, the backwoods sort of down and dirty part of the film, like it's a lot of green and it's a lot of brown and it's a lot of, sort of roughed up, dirty color palette.
Uh, let's dive more into Alice now. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, Jenna is an amazing actress. Was Alice written first off with Jenna in mind, or
Yeah.
were you really ecstatic when she took on the role?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote it with her in mind because, we had done the ruins together and just stayed friends and kind of talked about finding something to do, and just hadn't found the right project. And so I hoped that she would be on board and be as into it as, as I wanted her to be. And, luckily she was down to come to, where we shot in Maine in the middle of nowhere, and, sort of leave the rest of the world behind for a couple weeks and go into like movie making camp.
Yeah, she definitely brings an element to this film that really puts it over the top. Now, Alice evolves throughout the film from when we
Yeah.
first meet her holding the two guys at gunpoint to the end. We see her go through a whole arc. Tell us why the character of Alice is so important to this story.
I mean, I think that she, in a lot of ways, represents like, she's someone that is caught up in this situation and sort of is doing what needs to be done to make ends meet, like Dom. And but I don't think that that makes her a bad person, and it doesn't make her, a sort of one note villain. I think that when she kind of starts to realize and understand the consequences of you know when things go wrong, they go really wrong. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that that's happened to them before. So this is happening for her the first time, as much as it's happening to Benjamin and Dom. So I think that, like, she is in touch with her humanity and her, like, her sort of, she has compassion in a way that is, I mean, it shouldn't be surprising for any human, but like it is maybe surprising from a bad guy character.
And that's the contrast that we see between Mark's character and Alice. Is
Yeah,
Mark is a straight up bad guy, while Alice, we meet her holding these guys at gunpoint, but then we see the humanity in her as the story progresses. Benjamin also goes through a transformation
yeah,
with that scene in the bathroom that sort of starts this whole sequence of events after the guys have ingested the balloons full
yep,
of the contraband. Dom gets into a fight. He gets punched in the stomach. Benjamin was very passive at that moment, just
yeah,
wanted to avoid any conflict. And then we see a transformation in him when he's in the cabin and he's under Dom's control, sorry, Mark Patton's control, and
yeah.
he's told to strip. What do you think was the tipping point for Benjamin being this passive, no conflict guy to going into survival mode?
Well, I think that in a lot of ways, growing up, Benjamin in that community, growing up, being a queer kid, and kind of, I think that a big part of that, in a place that kind of can feel hostile, is shrinking and sort of disappearing as much as possible,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of not calling attention to yourself and sort of going under the radar. Not that he has any problems with who he is. I mean, he's sort of comfortable and confident, but I think his default is probably, to kind of disappear into the background. And then at a certain point, when it becomes clear to him that, if he doesn't step up and do something, that yeah, it's going to get even worse. And it sort of, it falls squarely on his shoulders, and to right the wrongs that have happened so far in the film. And that was a really fun, there was a really fun arc to write, and I think it was a really fun arc for Cooper to play,
Yeah, yeah.
as Benjamin.
Now there were some gut wrenching scenes when the balloons have to be extracted from Dom,
Yeah.
with Benjamin doing. Uh, Tell us the significance of that sequence, and was it difficult to shoot that entire scene?
I mean, I was always kind of interested in this. I mean, Benjamin is, his best friend Dom. Like, Benjamin is sort of secretly in love with Dom, and maybe not so secretly. Like, I think that Dom knows, and it's
Yeah.
sort of an open thing between them. And so there's something so twisted and perverted about the way that that scene unfolds, and
Mm-hmm.
sort of how intimate they're forced to become in the most horrific way. Um, and because that takes place over, it's a good, like, 15-minute sequence.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stops and starts, and different things that happen along the way. So it was a really complicated and difficult scene to shoot. But we just talked about how it was going to be shot and where the camera was going to be, and the sort of what we were going to be seeing as an audience. I mean, always from the beginning, it was never meant to be something that, like, you sort of saw. I was
Flinched
never
at.
going for, like, gross out, like, I'm not
Yeah.
showing, like, the details.
Yeah. I mean,
It's more
here's,
about
yeah,
their
here's
faces and what's happening, and how the pain that they're going through emotionally and physically.
exactly, here you have somebody in agony and pain dying on the floor, and you have his best friend over him trying to save his life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't flinching. It was when it was gut wrenching because of what Dom was going through, and
Yeah.
and we as the audience can almost feel his pain right along with him. Now we already talked about Benjamin was leaving for Los Angeles. He's leaving because he's aspiring to become a porn star.
Yeah.
Now, was that just a way to write how his character is leaving this town and moving to LA? Did it come up, or did it have another kind of significance, him wanting to be a porn star?
Well, I like the idea of him being completely comfortable with himself, and I think that allowed, him as a character to sort of be secure in his sexuality and sort of in how he thinks of himself and sort of what he's comfortable with. But then also, I think that comes in handy when you're dealing with a villain like Rich, Mark Patton's character. I think
Hmm.
that there's certainly qualities and talents that he makes the most of, once he is told to strip and sort of, it is at the beck and call of the Rich character. I think so. That was always interesting to me.
Uh, right at the end credits, you put a snippet in of Benjamin Cooper in real life. People who are not familiar with Cooper, what can you say about Cooper that they may not know?
Yeah, well, that's Benjamin. That's the character Benjamin after he's,
Yeah.
spoiler alert, makes it out and makes it to, the Squirty Awards, where he's winning awards for, sort of best performance, best newcomer, best group, like, that's
You
that's
see,
that's his
that fooled me as well. I thought it
yeah.
was sort of a real life thing,
No,
uh,
that's Benjamin the
not a
character,
fast
100%.
forward.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to
Brilliant.
suggest that like, I mean, the ending of the film can be a little bit of a downer. And I kind of wanted to end on something fun
Yeah.
and, to sort of, for people to know that Benjamin, for all he went through and everything that he lost, like he actually ends up okay.
See, that's brilliant.
Um,
I
yeah.
love that. I love that you did that. Now, staying with the end here, the film leaves the fate of some characters up in the air, up to the audience to decide what happens after the credit rolls.
Yeah.
Uh, do you like doing that with your writing and directing, not handing everything to the audience on a silver plate?
Yeah, I like to try to give just enough, but not everything, if that's, when that's possible. I mean, sometimes you have to give a little more or give a little less, but whenever I can, I like to let the audience kind of make their own decisions or, come to their own conclusions.
Now, the
But I don't know, I
ending,
don't know, I don't know what you think is ambiguous. Like, I don't like, without giving anything away, like I don't know if,
well, Mark Pan's character, what
yeah, I
actually
mean,
happens to him?
if that happened to you, do you think you would survive?
Yeah, yeah, it's not the
I,
most pleasant.
I mean, I would not that I want that to happen to anybody, but like, yes, I mean, there is, I guess there is a world where, there could be a return.
And is that Benjamin extracting revenge for what happened, with the whole
Yeah,
sequence?
yeah, totally. Yeah. I
Okay,
mean, his best friend is, he's got that on his shoulders, so he's
exactly.
he's willing to do whatever it takes.
Carter, I want to thank you so much. For our
Yeah.
audience, again, the movie's called Swallowed. It is available today on demand. I'm
Yeah.
assuming on all the major TVOD platforms.
Yep. All of the Amazons and iTunes and
Yeah,
Googles and Voodoos.
please check this movie out. You're gonna really find it fascinating from start to end. It released today. Carter Smith wrote and directed the film. Thank you so much for being our guest. I want to thank our audience, those of you who are tuning in live and those who will be watching this later on. On behalf of Carter Smith and myself, stay safe and stay walking. Good night, everybody.